First, Amy had to go out of town unexpectedly and is going to try to join us in a few minutes. If she's not able to join us and you have questions specifically for her, please send her an email and she will be happy to answer. So my name is Ruben and I'm ready.
All right, for those of you who in attendance, as Amy Turney said, if you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat box or just come off mute and ask Ruben directly. Either is perfect. Thank you.
I'll go. Ruben, I was telling you before, I'm a big produce fan, and I had to step out before y'all finished talking about the produce that you generate for the culinary section of your clubhouse. What kind of, can you tell me what kind of produce y'all grow?
We've grown, of course, tomatoes, but we grow varieties you can't get in the store. Mm-hmm. You know, the yellow, the orange, cherry tomatoes. We also grow okra, we grow eggplant, different varieties of cucumber, watermelon, cantaloupe, different varieties of cantaloupe. And all that, any extras that we have, we try to take it to the San Angelo Farmers Market. About the only thing we haven't grown is corn, but about beans, we've grown shallots. We did really good with shallots also. And I'm probably missing some, but that's what we grow.
Nice. Well, I could keep you here all night, but I do want to let the other participants who may have questions have an opportunity to ask a question. But since I'm a master gardener too, I always want to talk gardening.
if they came in to just hear, you can go ahead and ask me, and I'll do my best.
Y'all feel free, just think of this as us sitting around the table here. And so unmute yourself if you'd like to ask a question or type it in the chat, and Matthew will let us know what that question is. But Ruben, in your presentation, did you tell people what it takes to become a master gardener or how to become a master gardener?
No, I did not. For the Concho Valley, you have to take I think it's about an 8-week course, and it's 2 to 3 hours per week. And once you're done with that, you have to volunteer 50 hours at either like a community garden, the Boys and Girls Club, Senior Center. If you have a specialty, then you can also give talks, which are considered hours for volunteering. And then you have to also have 20 hours of ongoing education per year. Mm-hmm. So, and luckily here in the Concho Valley, there are, San Angelo State's here. The extension gives classes. Anything you sign up for goes toward, what's needed to keep your Master Gardener certificate.
Okay.
Hey, Ruben, a question's come through. For the beginning gardener, are there any vegetables or plants that you would suggest starting with? And I'm particularly thinking maybe about in the Gulf Coast region, if you have region-specific suggestions.
The Gulf Coast. Well, tomatoes will grow just about anywhere. But cucumbers also. The only thing with cucumbers, you've got to have, tomatoes are windborne pollinated. And the cucumbers, if there are bees in your area, they're also a good crop to grow, because you'll get quite a a good crop. If you don't have bees and you want to grow them, you can always hand pollinate them with a little tiny paintbrush. It's a pain, but it works also. But those two you can't go wrong. The other thing is, if you like squash, you can't go wrong. The plants can get aphids and other bugs on them, but you can just wash them off. The plants will look really beat up, but as you'll see, they'll have tons of flowers, and they'll give you quite a bit of fruit. I mean, of vegetables.
Okay, thank you, Ruben. Another question's come through. Are there any recommendations for species, indoor or outdoor, that don't necessarily attract worms?
By worms, I'm thinking you're probably thinking of caterpillars that eat the plants. So let me think. Wow, they're all tomatoes. Eggplants, if you like eggplant, we didn't have a lot of problems with caterpillars on the eggplants. Okra also didn't have, but they weren't super popular in our clubhouse. Unfortunately, tomatoes, the cucumbers don't necessarily have worms, but they do have aphids. So right at this point, that's all. The okra, the cucumbers, I think that's about it. Unfortunately, vegetables attract a lot of bugs, but it's easy to control them without pesticides. And if you're not squeamish, you can knock them down with your hand or with a water hose. But unfortunately, they do attract bugs.
All right, some gratitude is coming through the chat, Ruben. Thank you. There are no more questions for the time being. If you do have a question, anybody in attendance, please feel free to type in the chat box or just come off mute and ask Ruben directly.
Maybe Amy has more questions.
Ruben, how did you find out about the grant?
The grant was, if you go to your county agricultural agent, they'll have a list usually, or they can get you in contact with someone. Unfortunately, if you try to Google it yourself, you're going to get a bunch of, they're going to ask you all this information, but they're really a third party, and sometimes it's just a scam. So it's better to go to your county agriculture agent and ask them. There a lot of times they only have small grants. Once you get, looking as to who has grants, and like in Houston, the city of Houston may have a lot of grants. And even though they're not they don't necessarily say they're for agriculture or for horticulture. The large grant we got, it was not advertised as that. It was more of a community. Are you bettering your community? So we went ahead and applied for that, and we won it. And that was a $15,000 grant. And with that, we were able to buy raised beds, which if you use raised beds in conjunction with square foot gardening techniques, you'll get a huge harvest. And that's what we do right now with the raised beds. We also were able to get a small greenhouse, but as of this date, we're not It's tiny, but the city is not allowing us to put it up, but we'll see what happens in the future. But they're out there, so don't hesitate in applying for those. We scrambled when we first started. We had nothing. We got everything donated. It was all used, which is still good. But now we're able to get what we need with the large grant.
Very good.
Ruben, another question has come through the chat. I'll just read it verbatim. Hi, Ruben. I live in San Antonio and want to build a few raised beds for veggies. What do you recommend as an easy build, install, do-it-yourself project? Sun's best on the driveway, but it's large enough to build in front of window of my old house.
If you can get, you don't have to purchase expensive already made beds. We did that, but we had, with the grant, we were able to do that. And we did that because in our place, we wanted members to get some experience putting them together. But you can start with cedar and look around at your lumber yards and whatnot, and it doesn't have to be finished cedar. Cedar will take a lot of water without it deteriorating, and it doesn't have chemicals already in it. You don't want anything that's been treated. It could leach into your soil. You can make a 4x4 or a 4x8 raised bed. You can have it, if you're going to put it on the ground, you could have it a foot or 2 feet high. The key to your raised bed is going to be what you put in it, the soil, the substrate. I don't call it soil because we mix, in our raised beds, we put 30% vermiculite and 30% compost. I'm sorry. And we just don't buy the regular stuff that you can buy raised bed mix, but and the other 30% was the peat moss, but it's expensive. So if you can get a bag of peat moss, a bag of coarse vermiculite, and then mix your own compost with some manure and worm casings or chicken burr compost, those are all cheap. And then mix them together, place them in your raised bed. If you want super specifics, if you email me, I'll give you exactly what we do. And then we use square foot gardening, which just means for every square foot, we put a plant. And some plants, in some square feet, you could put two plants. And again, if you'd like to know what we do, if you could email me, I will get that information to you. But it has worked successfully for us.
All right, thank you for that, Ruben. We have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions, if there are 1 or 2 more questions. So feel free to type those in the chat or come off mute. Okay, we got one last question coming through. What is safe to plant right now at this time of year?
It's gonna freeze. So at least you're in San Antonio, I think you said. I don't know what your freeze dates are. In our area, we call them winter vegetables. So we have broccoli planted right now. We have cabbage, lettuce, and for our area, I know this is going to sound strange, but we plant strawberries too. They do much better in the fall and winter here than they do in the spring. here in San Angelo, we have many, many, many 100+ days, and the strawberries just don't like it. But they do well at this time of the year. So any leaf vegetables that you like are good to plant now. Now, when it gets to freezing, what we do is we cover them with a garden fabric. It's a white, you can, look at, Google it, and some of them are relatively cheap. And we just cover them when we're going to get below 32. And what the fabric does, it keeps them not warm, but they'll stay alive underneath the fabric. They won't die until it gets into the low 20s. So that's the way we do it. Any kind of leaf vegetable, broccoli, carrots, so those type of vegetables, salad type of vegetables, will grow now. And it's relatively safe, and they like it. They like the cooler temperatures.
I'm jealous that you can grow strawberries so well there. Are you able to grow blueberries? It's the sand, the soil's not sandy enough for us here.
Yeah, we have failed, but we are getting better.
Yeah.
And I think this year we're going to have a number of a good crop. We've learned how to manage pH, and that's the big thing. So we've become really good at that. And we're going to try to grow them in sponge moss. We found out that in soil, they're like a lot of plants, they like their roots wet, but they don't want to be like in a bathtub. So they want them wet all the time, but they don't want the water. They don't want to be submerged. Yeah. But like I said, we've gotten good with lime and sulfur, and we can move the pH meter to where we want it now. So we're going to definitely, again, what we do is we ask the agricultural agent in our county and for our USDA zone, which variety we have the best chance with.
Right.
So there are blueberries that we can grow here. And if you ask me next year, we'll give you a blueberry pie.
It's my understanding, my blueberries, I gave up on them, but it's my understanding that they make a very nice ornamental bush when they're not producing fruit, and they have very lovely blossoms.
Yeah, that's we haven't gotten there yet, but we're gonna get there. We're pretty certain we can do it.
That's great.
So we're gonna go ahead and order those two. You'll have to order as plants, but little plants are cheap. So
yeah,
I wouldn't recommend planting them as seeds.
No,
we're gonna be successful. We've already moved the meter around just by adding sulfur and lime, to increase or decrease. So
that's great.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna have to come visit y'all's clubhouse.
Yeah.
The
spring is the best, but even now we just finished up with the climate change. We haven't had a freeze. By now we would have had a freeze. We may not, I don't know what's going to happen. So we're just happy to keep growing. Our broccoli's huge, and the heads are just beginning to form. So we're just hoping that but we cover them, like I said. Use the garden fabric. It's a white, cheap fabric. You can Google it, and it protects them. There's a summer one that we use for bugs that lets in about 70% of the light. The winter one doesn't let as much light because it's thicker.
Right.
But it definitely keeps them warmer underneath it.
Well, Ruben, we want to thank you for being available to answer questions and to give everybody your email address. I'm going to give the participants one more chance to ask a question. And if we hear none, we're going to go ahead and close this down. And Ruben, be sure and get in touch with who you need to get in touch with if you need any help
Yes.
with anything moving forward.
I will. With
Hey.
I'll call him at 9:08, right?
Yes.
Yes. And thank you so much, everyone. Again, decreasing the stress and the anxiety is what was most important for us, and is still. The produce is anything, or flowers is just, icing on the cake. But it's worked for the members of our clubhouse.
All right. Great talk, Ruben. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to stop the recording now.
Okay.